Hi, here I am. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining me. I have just got this puppy, Clemmy Bear, and I've been walking around with him. Now he can go outside. And it's really lovely, actually, as the seasons are changing, to be able to do these walks with him, even though they're little short walks. And I take him to the graveyard where it's safe, so we can walk together. He can get to know a familiar place. And if any dogs do come into the graveyard, they're always on a lead because people are very respectful. So that's very, very helpful. I did think about taking him to the park, but I decided no, it's too soon. Lots of dogs are off their leads, very unpredictable environment. And at least with this, he can get used to sort of little slow walks with me, which is really great. Now, today I'm going to start by doing some reading for you from one of my favourite books. It's by Thich Nhat Hanh and it's called True Love. Now, I've dipped in and out of this since I discovered it in my bookshelf about, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks ago. It actually belongs to my mother and I didn't recognise it, and I thought, how come I've got this book? And it was my mother's, as I said, and it was from a true love of hers from when she was young, when she was about 17. And there was a lovely letter. They'd obviously reconnected. Now, where have I put it? I've put the letter somewhere. Oh no, I've lost it. There was a lovely letter, here we go, which was in the book, which was from him, typed out from him. And I just think when you discover things like this, they should be read, really, because they're obviously there for a reason. And lots of us go through lots of tricky times in our lives, and the wisdom of this lovely Vietnamese Buddhist monk who actually had he died a few years ago, but he kind of started this amazing sort of Buddhist retreat in France called, I think, Plum Village, and apparently it was amazing. Lots of people used to go there. They still do, and just find a little bit of peace and quiet and solace, and be at one with nature, be at one with themselves, and learn some Buddhist teachings and things. So I think it was a very helpful and tranquil place to be, and to just kind of sort out, rejig your brain, I suppose, and just get yourself on the path that you want to be on. Anyway, this book is a great little book for that, and I'm going to start by reading a piece here, which is actually called "Restoring Peace Within Yourself." And it made me think, when I read it earlier, it made me think about taking my little dog for a walk and how that can restore peace within yourself as well. So I'm going to read from the book, Restoring Peace Within Yourself. During the day, if you practice walking meditation, each step brings you back to the present moment. Each step enables you to touch what is beautiful, what is true. And in this way, after a few weeks of practice, joy will become something possible. And you will be able to undo many knots within yourself. That's what I was saying, the little rejigging your brain. And you'll be able to transform negative energies into joy and peace. The Buddha said this: the object of your practice should first of all be yourself. Your love for the other, your ability to love another person, depends on your ability to love yourself. If you're not able to take care of yourself, if you're not able to accept yourself, how could you accept another person? And how could you love him or her? Sorry, I've got a puppy underneath my desk biting my feet at the moment. So if I move around like that and do funny things, then that's why. So if you're not able to take care of yourself, if you're not able to accept yourself, how could you accept another person, and how could you love him or her? So it is necessary to come back to yourself in order to be able to achieve the transformation. Each of us is a king who reigns over a vast territory that has 5 rivers. The first river is our body, which we do not know well enough. The second is the river of sensations. Each sensation is a drop of water in this river. There are pleasant sensations and others are unpleasant, and there are neutral sensations. To meditate is to sit down on the bank of the river of sensations and identify each sensation as it arises. The third is the river of perceptions, which it is necessary to observe. You must look deeply into their nature in order to understand. The fourth is the river of mental formations, of which there are 51. And finally, the fifth is the river of consciousness. Our territory is really very vast, but we're not responsible kings or queens. We always try to dodge away, and we do not keep up a real surveillance of our territory. We have the feeling that there are intense conflicts there, too much suffering, too much pain. That's the reason we're very hesitant to get back to our territory. Our daily practice consists in running away. If we have a moment free, we will make sense of it, to watch television or read a magazine article, so we will not have to go back to our territory. We're afraid of the suffering that is inside us, afraid of war and conflicts. The practice of mindfulness, the practice of meditation, consists of coming back to ourselves in order to restore peace and harmony. The energy with which we can do this is the energy of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a kind of energy that carries with it concentration, understanding, and love. If we come back to ourselves to restore peace and harmony, then helping another person will be a much easier thing. Caring for yourself, re-establishing peace in yourself, is the basic condition for helping someone else. So that the other can stop being a bomb, a source of pain for ourselves and others, you really have to help him to diffuse the bomb. To be able to provide help, we have to have a little calm, a little joy, a little compassion in ourselves. This is what we get from mindfulness in everyday life. Because mindfulness is not something that is only done in a meditation hall, it is also done in the kitchen, in the garden, when we're on the telephone, when we're driving a car, or when we're doing the dishes, or going for a walk. If you can do it this way, 3 weeks are enough to transform the pain inside you, to bring back your joy in living, to cultivate the energy of compassion with which you can help the person you love. The practice of being there is what's beautiful, and with what is healing is something we should do every day, and it is possible to do this in everyday life. Let's just read that last bit again. If you can do it in this way, 3 weeks are enough to transform the pain inside you, to bring back your joy in living, to cultivate the energy of compassion with which you can help the person you love. The practice of being there with what is beautiful and with what is healing is something we should do every day, and it is possible to do this in everyday life. So that's very wise words there from True Love by Thich Nhat Hanh. So I've started the practice of walking meditation, I suppose. I walk with my little puppy, and I walk through the cemetery, which is a very, very old, very kind of sacred space. It's Norman, so it goes back to the 12th or 11th century, and it is a very old, well looked after, but very, very, very ancient grave burial site. And it gives me great peace, and there are lots of really lovely trees in the cemetery. There's a huge redwood, there's a lovely walnut, there's an Indian bean tree. I'm just looking out now to see what else there is. There's a couple of lovely cherries. There's obviously in ancient graveyards in the UK we get these yew trees. There's a huge Irish yew tree which is very majestic. There's all sorts. I'm just looking. There's all sorts of conifers. There's all sorts of beautiful things, and it's a very peaceful and quite sacred place and space. And I'm very fortunate that I can just walk across my road, across my street with my little puppy, and we can walk in that graveyard. And he's beginning to get to know it now. He's got his favourite gravestones, and he kind of wanders around and he loiters and he does his business and he smells everything and he listens to all the sounds, and he's just getting familiar with the outside world. And with the time that I have to take to let him enjoy and to allow him to enjoy that space, I have to stop what I'm doing. And when I stop what I'm doing and I go out with him in the outside world, I don't think about anything else. Very soon I find myself talking to him as though he's one of my best friends, even though I've only known my puppy for, 3 weeks? I chat away to him like he's a best friend. It's like having a therapist. Come on, Clebby Bear, I wonder whose grave that is, and I wonder what they did in their life, and you're just talking nonsense, but chatting away as if you were taking a baby in a pushchair and taking a baby out in the pram or something, in the buggy. And it's really lovely. It's very grounding. It's very peaceful. It's a real connection that I can form with my puppy and with me, and a connection that I can form with myself at the same time, which is exactly what they were saying, what he was saying in the book. And it also allows me to slow down, just step off the earth for a minute, go into a completely beautiful, neutral, sacred space, and just come into myself. And I think that's really, really important, because we spend so much time rushing around, don't we? We're all guilty of it. We're all dashing from one appointment to the next, from one meeting to the next, from one place to the next, from one event to the next, one train station, one bus, one hop in the car, whatever it is. We're dashing around and coming home, making dinner for the kids, making, doing the laundry, doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that, volunteering for this, being on the committee for that, and organising Halloween or whatever it is that we've got in our head. And I think it's really important to just step off all of that whirlwind, that sort of like, what do you call it, hamster wheel of life, and just actually take a deep breath, center yourself and find out who you are. Start to consider your own kind of needs and your own requirements, and stop really focusing on the challenges that are outside in the kind of real world. Although this is the real world. Talking to you is the real world. Going out into the cemetery is the real world. But what I mean is just putting aside all of the conflicts that are happening in the world, all of the pressures that everybody wants from you. Mostly people want a piece of you, don't they? And they want to have, they want you, they want your time, they want your input, they want this, they want that. And actually just step away from all of that and just be totally at peace with yourself. And I think that's so, so crucial. And with that peace, and with that sort of rewiring of your brain, I suppose, through the coming of that sort of inner peace, comes a realization, I believe, that certainly with me it does, that actually everything I need and everything I have is within me and within my grasp. And I can do it if I love myself, if I take care of myself, and if I consider myself. I'm not saying in a kind of hyper, kind of narcissistic way. I just mean in a simple, pure way, where really you cannot help anybody else until you figure out what's going on inside here and what's going on inside here. And I think that's true. If you think about relationships, the relationships that we have with all of our significant others, how can we have a loving relationship with another human being unless we're some way close to actually liking ourselves or loving ourselves first? I think it's very, very difficult, because you'll be constantly up against conflict. And that conflict is often can materialize in projection, in self-doubt, and all of those things can become quite destructive. I heard a story once about this woman who'd had an incredibly coercive nightmare relationship, and she had no self-esteem and she had no self-worth. And it took her a very long time to get out of this relationship. They didn't have any children, thankfully. But it took her an incredibly long time to get out of this relationship. And she still did not love herself or think that she was worthy of anything. And she met somebody who fell in love with her. He fell in love with her for the fact that she was who she was, just her, simple woman that he fell in love with, that he loved. He loved her for everything that she was. And he wanted to marry her. And she could not understand why. And she constantly basically was hijacking her own potential happy future by planting and putting things in the path of her happiness. I'm not good enough. Why do you want to marry me? It's all going to go wrong. You're going to wake up one day and you're not going to like me anymore. You don't find me attractive. You're just settling for second best. You're this, you're that. I'm this, I'm that. And it went on like that. And sorry, my dog is under my desk and he's playing with my jeans. And it went on like that until her best friend turned to her and said to her, look, I think you need to see a therapist about this because you are a wonderful person. You are worthy. He does love you. You could have an amazing future together. And if only you could see, and you can't see because the light of your loveliness and the light of your kindness was extinguished by your previous awful relationship. So she went and got therapy, and actually they had couples therapy and it worked, and they ended up getting married. And I don't know what's happened to them now. This is somebody I knew probably about 20 or 25 years ago, and I haven't sadly kept in touch because I went to New York and all sorts of things. But yeah, so I remember thinking when about that, and I remember thinking that's so sad, that you can be put down so much in your first or your second or your one of your major relationships that you actually don't think that anybody's going to love you because you're not worthy of it. If you feel like that, I felt like that for a very long time, and I could identify with that story about that woman. But if you feel like that, then my advice to you would be, do go out into nature. Do go out and do your forest bathing or your wild swimming, or you're walking, even if it's slow walking like me. Slow walking, slow looking, I say. And I'm a real advocate for slow looking because I do things quite, not super slowly, but I can't run around like a kind of wild thing. I walk around and I amble around and I slow look at things and I try and take everything in. I try and drink up my environment. Like Thich Nhat Hanh was saying in here, get your senses, all those senses come to life, don't they? The senses when you're out in nature, especially, excuse me, I'm just going to have a sip of water. When I look at my puppy, when he's out, and this is the first week or 10 days that he's actually been allowed out, and I look at him and his sense of wonderment, and it's just really lovely because he's outside and he's sniffing around and he's rummaging around and he's got his certain gravestones that he really likes, and he goes to the same ones every single time. And I said to my son, do you think he can smell what's going on under the ground, or do you think it's just another animal that's come and squirted or done something against that gravestone that he can smell, and he's just smelling the musk or the aromas of those animals? It's probably the latter, I should imagine. But I look at him and I observe him, and I'm standing very slowly, slow looking at him as he explores his environment. And it makes me realise that if we do take the time to reconnect and to connect with, or just to connect with nature, with the changing seasons, stand in one place long enough, like I did with my dog, upwind, so that the smell of his poo bag that I'm holding doesn't obliterate my senses. But I really can smell and notice all sorts of different things that I never would if I just marched through that cemetery. If I just marched through the cemetery, didn't look around me, didn't have time to look around me, was on a mission, A to B, get to the other side, then I wouldn't notice all of the things that I have been noticing in the last, 10 days of having my puppy. The moss, the different types of moss, the lichen, the way that the leaves change every day when we go out, the way that the carpet of leaves on the ground is getting thicker and thicker, and the smell of that sort of autumnal decay, and how delicious it all is, and how rich it is, and how vibrant, even in a dull day like today when the sun's not shining, how vibrant everything seams and how green everything appears before the last kind of cloak of leaves sort of falls off the branches. It's a real joy. And when you walk through slowly, slow looking like me with my little puppy, okay, he gives me a lot of joy. But just being out in nature, being alive and feeling all of my senses come into play, everything sort of merging into one, really, just absorbing it all, is so, so beautiful. And it's such a privilege to be able to do that. So I would recommend to any of you who are feeling a little bit down in the dumps, or you're feeling a little bit sort of, it's a bit of a grey day, or the weather's not great. I mean, the last couple of days it's been a bit drizzly and rainy, but I just put my raincoat on, put my hood up. No, I don't wear a hood. I mean, I have got a hood, but I hate hoods. I don't mind my hair getting wet because my hair just gets wet and then it dries like this again. So I think go outside into nature, even in the damp and the rain, in the drizzle, in the wind, feel the elements, feel everything, just feel everything sort of thrashing against you, and just absorb it, and just drink in the beauty of what's around you. Do that slow looking, really look carefully, really observe stuff, look slowly. And I think it's a fantastic exercise, and it's very, very kind of nourishing for the soul and for the mind and for the body. Obviously it's good for you to go out and walk, good for the body to get a bit of exercise. I mean, like I said, I'm a very slow walker, so my exercise is going to be slow exercise because I've got my puppy and he's just on a lead at the moment, so I just let him sort of snuffle around and I'm just there really protecting him. But every sound, every bird, every squawk, every rustle in the bushes, everything that happens around us, he's aware of. And he makes me notice. And it's lovely. It's really, really good. And I really, really enjoy it. And it's just great to be reconnecting. And I think that it's very worth it if you get a chance to do that, wherever you are in the world. Because it's getting darker every day here. Soon it's going to be super dark. It's going to be dark. Well, it's about sort of almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's going to start getting dark about 3:30 here. 3:30, 4 o'clock. I've got a very bright light shining on me because there's probably not enough light outside to really make things very good for the camera. Because I only have a basic camera on my laptop. Another quick one before I go. Learning to speak with love again. Associated with the practice of deep listening is the practice of loving speech. We must learn to speak with love again. This is a thing that can be done in a practice community where brothers and sisters practice loving speech every day. There are pacifists who can write protest letters of great condemnation, but who are incapable of writing a love letter. You have to write in such a way that the other person is receptive toward reading. You have to speak in such a way that the other person is receptive towards listening. If you do not, it is not worth the trouble to write or to speak. To write in such a way is to practice meditation. I remember a young American who came to us to practice. One day he was asked to write a letter to his mother, which was easy for him. On the other hand, it was impossible for him to write a letter to his father. His father had died, but he still suffered every time he thought of him. Just the idea of picking up a pen to write to his father already caused him a great deal of suffering. I proposed the following practice to him. For 1 week, he practiced mindful breathing, saying to himself, breathing in, I see myself as a child of 5. When one is a little boy of 5, one is very fragile and vulnerable. As he was breathing in, he saw himself as the object of his own compassion. During the 2nd week, he meditated on his father. Breathing in, I see my dad as a little child of 5. Breathing out, I smile at the little boy who was my dad. For a whole week, the young American practiced very faithfully and very enthusiastically. He put a photo of his father on the table, and every time he walked into the room and looked at it, he practiced mindful breathing. He'd never imagined that his father could have been a child of 5. Suddenly, the young man acknowledged the presence of his father as a little boy, and it was the first time that he realised that his father had suffered as a little boy, and suddenly he felt compassion. Finally, one evening, he found it possible to write a first letter to his father. That transformed him completely, and now he has peace in his heart. Meditation is the practice of looking deeply into the nature of your suffering and your joy. Through the energy of mindfulness, through concentration, looking deeply into the nature of our suffering makes it possible for us to see the deep causes of that suffering. If you can keep mindfulness and concentration alive, then looking deeply will reveal to you the true nature of your pain. And freedom will arise as a result of your sustaining a deep vision into the nature of your pain. Solidity, freedom, calm, and joy are the fruits of meditation. There you go. So what do we learn from that? I think my father's still alive, and I sometimes find it hard to imagine him as a little child. But when I do imagine him as a little child, as a little boy, I think of him in a kind of, it's sort of almost like a reversal. I sort of start to feel more motherly towards him. And I do start to understand that life must have been very difficult for him when he was young. He grew up in Jersey in the Channel Islands. It was occupied by the Nazis during the war, and it was the only place in the British Isles in the UK that was occupied by the Nazis. And he was, they were starving. He was from a very, very poor family, and he had a very tough time. But I think because he was quite a pretty little boy, quite a sweet looking little boy, the soldiers used to give him chocolate. That's what he says. They always used to give him a little bit of chocolate and a little kind of, if they had a little car or a little toy or something, because he reminded them of the little ones back home. So he had a really tough time. And then after the war, it was very difficult in Jersey because they hadn't been growing crops. They're a big crop grower. They grow Jersey potatoes. They grow a lot of other vegetables, tomatoes, new potatoes, tomatoes, sweet corn, all sorts of things. And obviously during the war they couldn't do that. They were basically digging trenches and tunnels, and they dug an underground hospital. So it was a very, very strange and odd time for a little boy. Very different to anywhere else in the UK. And I think he kind of carries that with him because he's obsessed by the Second World War. Literally obsessed by it. He's always reading about it, always trying to find out stuff about it in a very kind of investigative way. And I think he was probably quite scarred by it. Even though he was only very, very little, he kind of grew up around that, in that bubble. So it was very difficult. And when I think about him like that, in that context, as a little vulnerable boy with nothing much to eat, apart from the occasional piece of chocolate from a German soldier, from a Nazi soldier, it makes me feel much more compassion towards him. It's interesting, isn't it? So I do believe that. Right, let's see what other people have got to say. Have you got anything to say about those little passages that I've just read? I'm going to look and see what people are saying. Let's have a look from the top. Charina says, love from California. Hi there. Pepino says, love from old Calabria. Oh, that's Italy, isn't it? Calabria. Lovely. Kathy says, hello from Kathy. Hello, Kathy. Chelsea says, sorry, just tuned in. If you feel like what? Well, Chelsea, I think the thing is to rewind and listen to this, and then you'll know what feeling like is all about. Kathy says she loves the change of the seasons. It creates a change in her as well. I can relate to that. I think that's true. I think the change in the seasons does change the way that we observe ourselves and the way that we are, doesn't it? We've got lots of things coming up. We've got Halloween coming up soon, All Hallows Eve. We've got Thanksgiving coming up next month. I've got my birthday coming up soon. We've got Guy Fawkes coming up soon. Very exciting time of year. Chelsea says she feels like a child again when she does that. Let's have a look and see what else we've got going on here. Peridita sends a big heart. Amparo's of love from Spain. So yeah, it's lovely to hear from you and lovely to see you all. And I shall love you and leave you now, because it's that time of day really. And I am going to go and do something else with the afternoon. I've got to go get on with some work, I think. So anyway, lots and lots and lots of love, and thank you for popping by, and I'll look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care, and don't forget, slow looking in nature, those deep breaths, and I promise you it will make you feel an awful lot better. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.